Thank you, Handel, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Regional News. We start off with some news in Trinidad, where passengers, both outward and inward bound, welcomed special flights from Caribbean Airlines on Sunday, saying these measures have brought much-needed relief to themselves and their families as countries around the world continue to shut their borders to prevent those infected with COVID-19 from entering their respective countries. Even more ecstatic were some 8 Trinidad and Tobago nationals who returned from Guyana on a flight BW3462 just before noon, as they beat Sunday's midnight deadline in which the country's borders by air and sea were closed to all passengers. The surprise announcement of the border closure on Saturday by National Security Minister Stuart Young had heightened the anxiety of nationals abroad who were trying to desperately to get home. Guyana closed its borders last week for 14 days. Locals who returned from Guyana yesterday were screened by health officials and after being given the all clear were ordered to spend 14 days in self-quarantine. While some told the Trinidad and Tobago media they did not want to share their experiences because of fear of being discriminated by fellow employees or even members of their respective communities, others spoke briefly about their time in Guyana and the way to return home. Thomas Chanona, the owner of Key Chanona Limited, a regional building contractor, heaped praise on Caribbean Airlines as he expressed his relief at being on native soil once again. Recounting his experience in neighboring Guyana, Chanona said, and I quote, "The Guyanese is aware of it and they are still mingling a lot. Their culture's market and is very risky. I am just glad to be home and even more grateful to Caribbean Airlines." Leon Liguor, head of corporate communications at CAL, said that flight from Guyana based on the travel restrictions to Guyana, that flight ferried to Guyana and came back to Trinidad. The Guyanese government is allowing persons to leave Guyana and our restrictions is that only nationals and permanent residents can land in Trinidad and Tobago. And still in Trinidad and Tobago, as their economy begins to feel the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic fallout, the government is moving to announce initiatives to provide a source of income to those who lose jobs during this time. On Friday, the Parliament passed the Public Health Ordinance Regulations, which now legally forces bars, clubs, casinos, cinemas, and clubs from opening and restaurants and other food businesses from having dine-in services. Already, there have been reports of people losing jobs in these areas, with bars and clubs being the hardest hit and other related industry. On Sunday, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said his government is putting things in place for retrenched workers. Rowley also revealed that he has been advised that the effects of the pandemic could last as long as May or even further. As such, he said the government will go to Parliament this week to get approval to draw down from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund to get money to assist those in need. And finally, the number of corona cases in Barbados increased to 14 overnight, and the island is in stage 2 of the National COVID-19 Preparedness Plan. Minister of Health and Wellness Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostick said of the 8 new cases, 7 were as a result of contact tracing, that is, finding those who came into contact with the original cases. The other person who tested positive is a visitor. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Anton Best said they compromised 9 women and 5 men. This was announced during the daily briefing at the court on Sunday. The other case is the cruise ship members, and it does not count towards Barbados' national total. Meanwhile, Prime Minister of Jamaica Andrew Holness has announced 3 more confirmed cases of COVID-19. This pushes the total of number of cases in Jamaica to 19. The new cases include a 38-year-old male U.S. citizen with a history of travel from Boston who arrived March 14, a 30-year-old female with a history of travel from New York arriving in Jamaica on March 17, and a 60-year-old female, a retiree of Portland. And that's for Regional News this evening. Back to you, Handel.